Tomorrow, the calendar turns to August, and that means it's time to recap the biggest and most noteworthy UNC stories of the past academic year. What all's going to make the list? You're about to find out over the course of the next 3 episodes.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Monday, July 31st, 2023. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade, and I want to thank you for getting in with us on your first listen or watch of the day. You everydayers, welcome back. It's always great to see you. If you're a visitor or maybe a first-time guest, man, welcome in. Come join us. We are having a fun little series at the beginning of this week. Here's what's going to happen. Today's July 31st, so that means tomorrow the calendar turns to August. Fall football camp starts up this week, and we're all starting to think about the upcoming school year. But before we get there, before we look ahead, I want to make sure to stop and take a look back at what I think are 10 of the most noteworthy or impactful moments in Carolina sports during the past academic year. Now, notice I didn't say top 10 moments or the best performances or anything like that. No, I just said top 10 most impactful or noteworthy moments. Things that made a big difference for one reason or another. Could be good, could be not as good, could be a change in a sport, could just be a big storyline, could be something that hit me different than it hit you. That's the part of fun of making a list, right? And what we're going to do is spread this out across the first 3 episodes of this week, so there's enough space to unpack everything appropriately. So today we'll do numbers 10 through 7, tomorrow Tuesday 6 through 4, and then on Wednesday we'll hit 3 through number 1 and a couple honorable mentions. Then on Thursday, Coach Pat Kilby and I are going to carry on our summer basketball roster preview series. We'll be looking at Harrison Ingram, and then on Friday, Pack is joining me again. We're going to do something of a fun summer pickup draft. We'll tell you more about that on Friday. So as we get into this list, I'd love for you to think about what you would put on this list from the past year. Let me know. Reach out in email or on YouTube comments, Twitter, whatever it may be. And by the way, I've had a ton of fun putting this together and reminiscing back on these moments, pulling up some of the footage and watching games, the ecstasy and the agony and everything in between. So let's get right into this thing. Number 10 on the list, men's basketball's win over Ohio State in the CBS Sports Classic at Madison Square Garden, 89-84 in overtime. This was a game that, frankly, I thought was done and over. Carolina had recently had a 4-game losing streak, had picked up a couple wins since then over Georgia Tech and the Citadel, but then thankfully won this game. So here's how it went down if you don't remember. Midway through the first half, Ohio State takes a double-digit lead, got up to as many as 14 points. And I don't know about you, but I'm sitting there thinking, all right, we just had that 4-game losing streak. Here we go, right? Not good. Downturn again. Well, Tar Heels got it to single digits at halftime. It was 9, but it was single digits. And then just less than 4 minutes into the second half, the Tar Heels came out of the locker room, shaved 8 more points off that lead, got it down to 1. But then, of course, the Buckeyes push it back out to double digits. And in fact, still had a 10-point lead with 6.5 to go. Carolina keeps clawing back, as they often do, and tie the game with 2 minutes and 10 seconds left, and ultimately took a lead with 1:29 to go. So let's walk through the beats of that final 89 seconds. Ohio State has the ball, down 1. There's about 30 seconds left. It was not a good possession. Carolina played pretty good defense on it, but Zed Key was up at the top of the lane, just bailed out the Buckeyes with a 3-pointer to get a 2-point lead. Back quickly on the other end, Caleb Love had a really nice pass to Mondo. I can't remember if it was a dunk or layup, but to tie the game with 17 seconds left. But then This is where I thought the game was over. Bryce Sensabaugh, sensational freshman at Ohio State last year, had Leaky draped all over him and somehow managed to pull up just 5 feet or so from the rim and get a shot off over Leaky to take a 2-point lead with just 2 seconds left on the clock. And again, I'm like, man, all hope is lost at this point. Carolina is not going to be able to pull this out. And it's just like, come to the Garden, you want to win, and this is what happens. But then, hopefully you remember as well as I do, Carolina still had 2 timeouts left. Ohio State is out of timeouts. They got none. Carolina goes ahead and takes one right then. Leaky's the inbound man from the opposite baseline, is able to get a nice pass to RJ, who dribbles just across half court, gets that other timeout so they can inbound the ball from in the front court. And you might remember this, but there's this whole scene, and we learned a good deal more about it later, where Coach Davis actually let Coach Lebo draw up the play for this. And even coming out of the huddle, I can't even remember specifically who now, but a couple of the guys were like, I don't know about this, right? Is this going to work? And should we abort and do something else? And the commentators, I remember speculating on, is it going to be Baycott or Love? What's going to happen? Well, Leaky is inbounding right in front of the Carolina bench and ultimately lofts it across the court, like across the lane, all the way over to Pete Nance, who is up by the elbow and just is able to get a turnaround in a very similar shot to where Luke May, or a very similar place on the court, to where Luke May hit his shot against Kentucky, drains it. Overtime, here we go. And then at that point, Carolina is able to ultimately win in overtime by that final score of 89-84. Wild stuff. Carolina pulled out. I know Ohio State they kind of tanked in Big Ten play last year, but might have been the biggest, one of the biggest wins of last year, certainly on one of the biggest stages that Carolina was in. If they had been able to pull out a win over Alabama, and that was so unfortunate, that might have been the biggest win. But really interesting stuff here. But again, remember, Carolina had just had that losing streak. Iowa State and then Bama up in Portland, and then had to go straight to Indiana for the ACC Big Ten Challenge, lost there, and then lost at Virginia Tech that following Sunday, I believe it was, without Armando, who was out hurt. And as I mentioned a minute ago, Carolina then beat Georgia Tech and Citadel in pretty quick succession. And then this one is like, okay, maybe this is a turning point. And then the very next game was beating Michigan in the Jumpman Invitational. So it's like, all right, 4-game losing streak, but you respond with the 4-game winning streak. But we all know kind of how the season went from there. But man, what a special moment this was in the most famous arena in the world. That Pete Nance miracle shot. You love to see it. And great passing from Leaky, both to set up the play, the play before that to get the ball to RJ, and then to make that pass to Pete for the tie. Great stuff from the Tar Heels. Unfortunately, we just didn't get enough of that last year. Well, coming up, we're going to hit both numbers 9 and 8 because we got to get 10 through 7 on this show. So, got to talk about women's basketball, a little bit of a challenging schedule for them and how they handled it. Plus, there were some individual Olympic sport national championships last season. We'll hit on both of those in just a second. But first, this episode of Locked on Tar Heels is brought to you by eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. And the same is true when it comes to your vehicle. Every part has to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head on over to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure that every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know that the part will be the right fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. So get the right parts with the right fit at the right price on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen every single day. Remember, there's a new fun way to submit listener questions. You can do that in a video format. And in fact, in a week or two, we're going to be having a mailbag episode. So I want to prepare you for that. If you want to submit a question through video, here's what you do. Email just a video from your phone, quick and easy, lockedontarheels@gmail.com. Give me your name, your number, not your name, where you're from, and your question. 15 seconds or less, and you might see yourself or hear yourself on the show coming up soon. If you don't want to do that, no worries. You can submit a question just the old-fashioned way, Twitter, Gmail, whatever you want to do. All right, we move on our list of the top 10 in Isaac's view of the most impactful or noteworthy UNC stories of the past academic year. Number 9 is women's basketball. Great team. Man, they just had this ridiculously challenging schedule last season. They played 11 games against top 25 opponents. Man, the ACC itself, and honestly, past couple years now has just been an absolute gauntlet, but it wasn't even an ACC play alone. Carolina's non-conference schedule was really, really difficult, and Carolina was able to get some really good wins out of it, but at times just, the lack of an inside presence kind of hurt and made things difficult. Carolina was able to pick up 2 top 5 wins last season, beat Iowa State, who was number 5 at the time, and then beat Notre Dame, who was number 4 at the time. In fact, that Notre Dame game was part of a really, really impressive stretch. It's funny, we just talked about the guys' 4-game losing streak. The women, unfortunately, had one of their own. They lost to number 19 Michigan, also in the Jumpman. No, I don't think that was in Jumpman Invitational. Forgive me. It might have been. Now I'm second guessing myself. But then they lost to Florida State. They lost at number 7 Virginia Tech, and then lost at Miami. So boom, 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 boom. And so that brings up that Notre Dame game I just mentioned. And you've lost 4 in a row, and you're staring down like, oh man, we're about to host the number 4 team in the nation. Very probable 5-game losing streak looming in front of us. But the Tar Heels, Coach Courtney Banghart's team, man, they banded together and were able to beat Notre Dame in that game 60-50. Great stuff. And that ignites a 8-game winning streak. So they were really, whereas the guys weren't able to quite mount a big push, the women did there off of their 4-game losing streak, 8 in a row. But then similar to the guys, kind of sputtered down the stretch, some wins and losses back and forth. But in that 8-game winning streak, it also included wins over in-state rivals. They beat number 11 NC State, number 13 Duke, and as you well know, Carolina beat Duke at Duke again to end the regular season. And so I know the ladies took on some losses last year. I still think they were criminally underseeded in the NCAA tournament, which hurt their cause, before ultimately losing to Ohio State. It's funny, we just talked about them with the guys. And so that was a bummer. I was really sad for them. And, we just talked about beating Duke twice there at home and on the road. Had to play them again in the ACC tournament. As the saying always goes, it's hard to knock off a team 3 times in a season. That proved true as the Tar Heels fell 44-40. Both teams were really strong defensively last year, as you remember, but that was in the ACC tournament. Here's the thing, though. I think looking ahead, this team is going to be really, really good this year. I know they lost Kennedy Todd Williams to the transfer portal, but bring back such an intact core, bring in some loaded recruiting class of freshmen, and the transfers they got, I'm really excited about as well. And, obviously you got Alyssa Utsby, and you got Deja, and Paulina Paris is going to be a sophomore. All these players, Kayla McPherson, really hopefully being fully healthy. And so lot to look forward to with the women's basketball team this upcoming season. Let's move on now to number 8, where Carolina had 2 individual Olympic sport national championships I want to talk about, or at least I should say 2 different people, 3 different national championships. I'll explain what I mean in just a second. Let's start with Austin O'Connor from the wrestling team, who won his 2nd career national championship for the Tar Heels. He won this year at 157. That took place, the national championship in Tulsa, Oklahoma, just an hour and a half west of where I live. And then a couple years ago in 2021, he had one at 149 weight class. So it had bumped up this year, and that was in St. Louis. Also had won the bronze in 2019 at 149. So Austin's just had a great, phenomenal career for the Tar Heels. All-American 5 times over. I mean, that's like in wrestling, it's just super impressive. And obviously now in this era where we've got people able to utilize that 5th year of COVID eligibility, we're going to have some different kind of numbers like that. But hey, don't take anything away from him. 3-time ACC champion Austin O'Connor was. Just great stuff from him there. And in fact, the second ever wrestler in UNC history to win multiple national championships. Oh, and by the way, the homie Austin was a 4-time state champion in high school. So he's been doing it his whole life and just kept doing it once he got to Carolina. All right. And then the other individual national champion for the Tar Heels was Aranza Vazquez Montano, who is part of the diving team. You might remember at the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, which actually took place in 2021 because of COVID, she was part of those Olympics representing her home country of Mexico. So great stuff. Anyway, Aranza won 2 national championships this year in Knoxville, Tennessee, the 1 meter and 3 meter springboard individual national championships. Just wild to think about pulling off a 2P like that. Like I think about any of these people, like, you know, obviously the person you most think of is Michael Phelps, who was just in the pool over and over and over again doing it. It's just, I cannot fathom the mental and physical and emotional fortitude it would take to do something like what Aranza did. But man, congratulations and way to represent the Tar Heels sister. Now, also, just recently here, she just won 3 medals, at least at the time of this recording, 3 of them at the 2023 World Aquatic Championship. She got the silver in mixed 3 meter, the silver in the 10 meter team dive, and the bronze in the 1 meter, individual dive. So Aranza just keeps racking up these awards and medals. And keep in mind, she's just going to be a junior at North Carolina this year. So excited to see what she can continue to do for her Tar Heels. By the way, pretty cool stuff. Her younger brother, Rodolfo, is also a diver at North Carolina. So it's all in the family there, and you love to see that. All right, friends, we've hit number 10. We've hit number 8. We've hit I know how to count. We've hit number 10, 9, and now number 8. Got one more to hit on today. Going over to the gridiron to talk about the football team and some really, really close games with the in-state ACC rivals. We'll hit on that in just a second. All right, we're carrying on our countdown of my top 10 most noteworthy moments for North Carolina athletics in the past academic year. We move now to number 7, and it involves the football team. We'll have a couple involving the football team along the way, but this is the first of them. And it was so crazy to me. There were a lot of close games for Carolina. We'll talk about that later on the countdown. But specifically right now, I want to hit on the close games with the in-state ACC rivals. Carolina went 2-1 last year against the in-state ACC schools, losing, unfortunately, to NC State for the second year in a row. Woof, gross, nasty. But did beat Wake and did beat Duke. What's nuts is all 3 of these games finished within the margin of victory was 3 points or fewer in all 3 of them, win or lose for the Tar Heels. So I just want to walk through these just to, trip down memory lane. We'll go through all 3 of them, just a couple of the big beats of these games. So let's start with the Wake Forest game. Carolina won this one 36-34. At the start of the fourth quarter, the Tar Heels were down 34-33, had a couple of shots down at, I believe it was at the Wake Forest 1, and just couldn't connect. I believe the actual fourth down play was a miss between Drake and Josh Downs. And so it was just just one of those games where it felt like, man, maybe we're just not going to make the plays to do it. Because up to that point, for a majority of the season, Carolina was super, super efficient in the red zone. there was a part, you might recall me talking about these numbers quite a bit, but where the Tar Heels had only missed out on scoring points in the red zone like 4 or 5 times. And at that point, 3 or 4 of those were because they were end of game kneel downs. And so they tapered off at the end of the year, but at this point they had been doing really well. So it was a shock to not get any points here in the red zone. So that starts the fourth quarter, and then Wake just keeps threatening throughout the fourth quarter. They stalled out at the UNC 10 on their own turnover on downs, and it was like, Wake's going to put more points on the board behind Sam Hartman and then just keep going. But thankfully, Carolina was able to get off the field there. But then on the Tar Heels' next possession, they had to punt. And so it's like, man, we're just, all right, fourth quarter, going down. Wake Forest comes back after that punt, gets across midfield, about 4.5 minutes to go. And it's like, boy, they're just going to eat the clock, run this thing out, maybe kick a field goal, take a knee, whatever it is. And then the game's over. But thankfully, Cam Kelly picked off Sam Hartman, Carolina ball. And then that next play, Carolina's first play after that, this time Drake May and Josh Downs do hook up, and it's for 43 yards down to the Wake 5. You love to see that. Unfortunately, Carolina couldn't push across a touchdown due to a sack and a penalty, but they do get 3 points to take the lead there, that 34-33 final threshold that we talked about, and then are able to hold on the next possession of Wake. Nothing really scary there, and that's your ball game. So Carolina takes that one. Now, I said we'd unpack all 3 of these games. I know the NC State one was the last one, and so chronologically we should end there. But because it was the loss, I want to take it next, and we can end on beating Duke. So the loss to NC State, 30-27. Again, all 3 of these games were a margin of 3 points or fewer. State led this one 17-10 at the half. Neither team scored in the third quarter. Drake was able to tie it up midway through the fourth quarter at 17 all. But then just under 4 minutes to go, NC State takes a lead at 24-17. Carolina goes on this wild drive after that. You remember this drive? Legitimately, I know the game ended in a loss, but this might have been, I don't know if I'd say my favorite drive of the season, but the most heart palpitating drive of the season. They started at their own 25, 3:54 to go, and Drake has all this opportunity. The Heels picked up 3 different fourth down conversions. The first one was, thank you very much, NC State, and offside. Carolina gets to keep going. The second fourth down conversion was a pass to Bryson Nesbitt, which was a scary play. Drake scrambles to his right, has to throw back across his body, which you never want to do. But, I mean, it's fourth down. The game's on the line. And you got to get 7 here. You can't settle for a field goal. And he scrambles to his right and has to throw it back to Nesbitt, kind of in coverage. There's 2 guys around him, so lofted it up. We all know how athletic and big Nesbitt is, so he's able to go up and get it and secure this. Beautiful catch there. And then, obviously, the other fourth down conversion was the game-tying touchdown to Antoine Green, literally as the clock goes to 0. You might even remember, though, it didn't look like the Tar Heels were going to have to rely on that fourth down because John Copenhaver had that catch coming across the screen to the left, and it looked like that was the game-tying catch. But review after review after review, he didn't have possession, and so Carolina needed that fourth down. Unfortunately, though, as we all remember, in overtime, the teams trade field goals in the first overtime. NC State gets a field goal in the second overtime, and then, unfortunately, Noah Burnett misses, and there's your ball game. Thanksgiving is ruined for everyone. You laugh because it's sad. Okay, and then the other in-state really close game was the Duke game. Carolina wins this one 38-35. Man, the scores of all these games were so close. This one, though, Carolina had a 10-point lead going into the fourth quarter, but Duke scores 2 touchdowns within the first 5 minutes of the fourth quarter to take a 4-point lead over the Tar Heels. Story of the season, right? Defense just keeps giving it up. But after that, North Carolina had a drive where it was like, all right, we're going. Drake's doing well. Let's go ahead and get this lead back. But Drake fumbled at like the Duke 35. Duke recovers it at their own 38. Duke gets all the way down to the Carolina 11 after that. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is bad. Duke's already up 4. They're about to score again. But even though they got down to the Carolina 11, had multiple penalties to back them up, like an offside and a personal foul penalty for 15 more yards. And then they ultimately missed a field goal. Carolina gets the ball back at their own 26, just 2:09 to go. Another opportunity for Drake to do work. There was another situation of completing a 4th down, got a 4th and 5 at the Duke 20 for 11 yards to Josh Downs, of course. And then Antoine Green strikes again, 8-yard touchdown pass from Drake to Antoine, and Carolina takes that 38-35 lead. Duke just has 16 seconds left. It was a little scary. They did have a big chunk play that got him across midfield, but then, as you probably recall, Will Hardy had an interception to seal the victory for the Tar Heels. You take a knee and get out of there. All right, folks, what a fun start to this list. 10 my top 10 at least, noteworthy, meaningful, big-time moments from Carolina athletics in the 2022-23 academic year. Again, as a reminder, coming up tomorrow, 6 through 4, and then on Wednesday, 3 through 1. I'd love to hear your list. What am I missing? What would you add? Where do you agree with me? Let me know. You can shoot us an email, lockedontarheels@gmail.com. You can DM the show on Twitter, Locked on Tar Heels, or me personally at Isaac Schade. Hey, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, smash the like button to let us know you're here, and leave comments. For those of you listening to the show, we'd love if you would go and leave a review at Apple Podcasts. Hey, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel, right? Yes, you know it. We'll talk again tomorrow, counting down 6 to 4. But until then, peace.